Thank you for coming back. We are now on to Module 2, Being Safe with Technology. And we're going to kick that off with a video on ergonomics. Just a couple minutes here to set up and drive our conversation for the next little bit. All right. So, what what are some takeaways from that, or looking at your desk right now? What do your ergonomics look like, and what's something you would change? I'll take it in the chat box, or somebody come off mute, please.
For my part-time job, I am a receptionist, so I'm sitting down all the time. So I should probably get up and move around more.
Mm-hmm. Is there the way your desk is laid out? Is it possible to get one of those like fancy slide up standing desk things?
No.
No. Oh man. Yeah. When I do eventually go back to my office, that's what I have, and that is super helpful for me. Because
Yeah. When I worked at a call center, they had that option, but you had to have like a medical like note from your doctor in order to even get it.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say kind of for everybody, depending on what your work situation is now, especially with the pandemic. Um, Employers are becoming much more lenient in terms of if you're working from home long term you might be able to get them to pay for you to get a better desk or a better chair or something like that at home. So it's worth at least calling up your HR and saying, hey, is there a chance? Any other
Yeah,
thoughts?
that's what we're doing for our company. We're lending like computer screens and different things like that to our employees that need it.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And that's kind of, it's beneficial to everyone, right? Because as a worker, you're more comfortable, but as an employer, if you improve the ergonomics, you're gonna get more productivity out of your people. So it really is. It's a good thing for everybody. Does anyone have something either at your work setup or your home setup that's working really good for you in terms of ergonomics?
I do have like that stand-up desk at my, not at my home, but at my desk at the office, and that thing is a lifesaver just because, you know, I'm sitting for so long and I'm just typing away, but as soon as I stand up, it's just nice to get a break from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think if it's standing desk is one of those things that, you know, if you don't have one, you kind of scoff at it. But once you do get one, you're like, oh, I see the whole big deal about this now. Yeah, and Courtney, really good point. In the chat box, hold on, we have noise. Yeah, really good point in the chat box, Courtney, talking about having your screen being at eye level. That definitely plays a big part in it. You might be able to tell the way I have my things laid out, where I have two screens going. So when I'm looking off to this screen, you're looking at the side of my face, and then when I look forward, my camera is actually up on top of my screen. So my eye level is really good looking at my screen, but it makes it kind of awkward because I'm never actually looking at you folks unless I remember to look up at the camera. So the ergonomics are comfortable for me, but maybe not the best for recording. Yeah, Peter, good call on the blue light filter. Sometimes your glasses, you can actually get a little extra piece of film on your glasses that filters out the blue light. On your phone, it's there, and on some computers, you can also turn on a blue light filter, and that helps a lot in terms of the eye strain. So we're talking about all these specific examples there, but let's think about the theory behind this. There's 5 points. Number one is safety, right? Make sure the workstation, the equipment, it has safety built in to prevent accidents and incidents. If you're on some sort of assembly line, maybe make sure that there are automated switches that if something goes wrong, the whole thing shuts down before somebody loses a finger, right? Comfort is a big thing. Design principles, making sure it's user-friendly. I have a very nice padded chair because most days, at least 8 hours a day, sometimes up to 10 or 11, I am right here at this desk in this chair. So it was very important to me to have a comfortable chair. Ease of use, making things easier for the operator. For me, that's the multiple screens. I don't have to switch my windows back and forth. I have 2 screens, and I just have to turn my head back and forth. That leads into productivity, right? The ergonomics are there. One aspect of that is increasing performance and efficiency. Because I'm not having to open and close windows, I can seamlessly keep this class moving. You're not waiting 5 seconds for me to make every single transition. And then aesthetics. As humans, we like things to look nice. And that actually does have a positive impact ergonomically, where if your workspace is nice to look at, it's pleasing to the eye, that does lead to a more positive environment that gets you all of the benefits that come along with it. All right, we're gonna slide into another video now to drive our next bit of discussion. right. So, thinking on that video, what kind of really stood out to you?
Never really thought about like the waste. I mean, granted, leaps in technology is great, stronger processors and stuff, but you kind of just tend to forget that there's like a waste aspect of it.
Absolutely. I think about that too of, okay, every year and a half, 2 years, I go buy a new phone. What do I do with the old one? Most of the time, it just sits in a drawer. But that doesn't help anybody, right? There's got to be a way of, I know there's people out there that even though my phone is cracked, that it would be a resource that could have a very big impact on their life. How do I make sure, instead of sitting in a drawer or getting off to a recycling plant, how do I make sure, wouldn't it be great if I could just take my phone, drop it off in a box that I know is going to be donated to somebody who needs it, right? Just things like that of even moving, just recycle and reuse. Thank you. And any other thoughts on that?
I have always been like a little conscious of the e-waste, especially because it's something that we deal at work as well.
Mm.
I mean, also being contradictive in the sense that if like they do take the item back as far as the company perspective, isn't it that also something that creates like those jobs for people? And then they will, if they make that long-lasting item, isn't that defeat the whole purpose of like sales and kind of like be able to afford to pay more people to create those long-lasting? So isn't that like a little bit contradictory as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get that. Something that comes to mind there is kind of shift those jobs into a service department instead. Where, okay, thinking about a laptop, right? It starts getting slow. Instead of throwing it out and buying a new one, Samsung could have, or HP could have a service department where you take your laptop in and they switch out new components for you. And actually, one thing I do, this thing is called a NextDock. So it looks just like a laptop, but this one actually has no hard drive, no RAM, no nothing. It's just a screen and a battery. And the way this one works is I plug my phone into it, and my phone is all of the hardware. So that's kind of moving towards being modular, right? Where if I want to upgrade my laptop, I don't have to go buy a new one of these. I just get a new phone, which I'm going to do anyways, and then my new phone becomes the upgrade for my laptop that I carry around. And this is actually something that in a lot of business environments, I don't know why it hasn't taken off yet, because a lot of times if you're in a really technical situation, people aren't doing the work directly on their laptops anyways. They're going over the internet and connecting to some big server or some other computer where the data and the resources actually exist. So a phone is capable of doing that connection over the internet. Even from a business perspective, instead of spending $1,000 to buy a laptop, spend $200 to get one of these, and then your employee's going to have a cell phone anyways. Boom, problem solved. Problem is, those ideas are really hard to get started in the business world. Same thing like working from home. A lot of us now, we are able to see of, hey, I'm just as productive at home as I am in the office. Of course, there's some jobs that you need to be there, you need to be doing it. But how many of us have jobs that we've been kind of thinking in the back of your head, I could do this from home. Now that the virus made that push for employers to do it, all of a sudden, this is a fundamental shift in the way we work. how do we get that same fundamental shift in the way we get our electronics? I don't expect any of us to have the answers about it. I just want to have us all be aware of these things we use are awesome. What's the impact to the environment? What's the impact to our health, other people's health? So just be aware. And yeah, Courtney, good call there. I didn't know that either until I watched this video of there being literally 5 pounds of lead in those old TVs. Makes me think back to buying a house where, you know, you've got disclaimers about, hey, there may or may not be traces of lead in the paint in this house, but nobody thinks twice about a TV sitting there with 5 pounds of lead in it. It's curious to me, even as a big technology guy, the things we choose not to think about. And any other thoughts on that before we move on?
Well, I kind of think like as far as like waste and whatnot, when like companies make new products, like a big thing in society is like you have to have the next best thing and the most upgraded thing, and like that's just kind of how society is. So everybody wants the next best thing, even if their current technology works perfectly fine. So. I guess it's kind of like the company's fault for making a new product, but also like not, just because, you know, society tells you you have to have the next best thing.
Right. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with having the next best thing.
Right.
But just be aware of the consequences, right? Yeah, that's a really good thought.
I was thinking the same thing. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, this video just made me self-aware. My friend works for the city. They showed me how many computers they throw away just to replace them with new ones. It was like, are you serious? You guys waste this? They just destroy them. They don't like donate them or anything. I mean, there's only so much we can do, but it just makes me think about like maybe I only should buy like what I need and not just go purchase stuff just to have it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that it all kind of ties together, right? Where, yeah, we have that technology aspect. Sorry, Peter, I'm going to keep you on mute just because there's an echo. So we have that technology aspect of, oh, it's going off to a dump somewhere, it's going off to a recycling center somewhere. But also I think about the societal impact of, I know that there are people at this college who are unable to do their work because they don't have the right kind of computer and they don't have $100 to spare to go pick up an old laptop. Peter, those computers that are being thrown away from the city, if we could get one of those in the hands of a student here at this college that needs it, that solves 2 problems at the same time. I really wish we could all start holistically thinking how we can solve these problems and help people. And sorry, Peter, I don't mean to silence you. If you got something to come back with me, come back with me. I thank you. I appreciate it. All right, awesome. Thank you. I appreciate the engagement. It helps me not to be talking at you, and I think it helps everybody else kind of retain things as well. This is one for you folks to go look at. It's there on Canvas. I'll pop it up here just for a second. I'm not going to go all the way in depth reading through this one. It's there on Canvas. Go through, check out these slides. Keeping in mind things around cyber ethics, cyber technology. Cyber ethics is, in any professional field, you have a code of ethics. Cyber ethics is taking that through the lens of technology and computers. All sorts of things to talk about. We will get into cyberbullying a bit, but just keep in mind, this whole thing right now, we're talking about ethical concepts and all of those sorts of things. Very important stuff here in this slideshow. but I'm not going to read stuff to you that you can read yourself. All right. Cyberbullying. If we were in class, I would ask everyone to close your eyes and raise your hands, but that's not really something we can do right now. So if you want to throw it in the chat box, send it as a private message just to me. If you don't feel comfortable answering, that's okay too. But again, just thinking about how these things impact us. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, there's probably 10 more I don't know about. Who's on at least one of those platforms pretty much a daily basis? I know I am. Have you ever, maybe committed bullying on one of those platforms? Maybe even back in high school, right? We all kind of gang up on each other. Even going back to MySpace days, it's okay. I'm not here to judge you. Just think about it, right? And on the flip side, who's been on the receiving end of bullying on one of those platforms? Again, just think about it, right? If you have been, how did you feel going through that? And if you haven't been, kind of imagine the impact that it could have on somebody's feelings in life. And yeah, seeing it there in the chat box, right? The Instagram is, there's wonderful things you can see, but usually not the best place for your self-esteem. And then, yeah, if you ever feel like losing faith in humanity, go open up the comment section on any political article these days. You will see plenty of people giving you fantastic examples of cyberbullying. We're talking about the bad there, but there is good and bad to all of these platforms, right? You're able to keep connected with your friends if you move away or you can't go see them. Maybe there's something going on in the world that keeps you from hanging out the way you would normally hang out, right? That's a good thing. You're able to stay connected. But we also have the downside. What we need to keep in mind is laws. I think we see the way our government works. The pace of legislature cannot keep up with the pace of innovation. So we really need to be almost policing ourselves, keeping our friends in line, keeping our family in line, and keeping ourselves in line, right? The law, there's not going to be, you can't, unless, of course, life and death situations, yes, do call 911, get somebody involved. But for the most part, if somebody's just being mean, you can't call the police and have that dealt with, right? So, how do we recognize social media bullying? I think a lot of times it's pretty obvious, but let's look at this academically since we are in an academic setting. What are some of the signs, some of the indications? Inappropriate pictures and videos, rude and hostile comments. I think there is no shortage of those these days. Following somebody from site to site or from page to page. I've seen that a couple times, right? Where an argument starts on Facebook and then spills over to Twitter and then spills over to Instagram. Let's think about that from a real life perspective. You're in class, you start arguing with somebody in the hallway. Are you going to follow them to 3 different rooms and keep that argument going? Most likely the answer is no. So why is that okay to happen online, right? We all know be the bigger person, walk away. Well, what happens if you walk away and the person keeps following you? Separate from just straight up inappropriate pictures is using pictures or videos to cause somebody distress, right? So for a fact that this person has a job interview coming up and they're going to be under the microscope. You either threaten or go ahead and post some pictures and tag them that's going to make that employer think twice is one example there. General rule, right? If you wouldn't say it face to face, don't say it online. 2 questions. Does it have to be straight up illegal to be cyberbullying? Nope, exactly. It's a gray area. There is no definitive line. Second question, we had some examples coming in the chat box. I gave some examples. What's missing from this list that you can think of that would help you recognize some cyberbullying's going on? So I do this thing called the awkward silence. So either chat box or come off mute. I'm gonna do the awkward silence thing here. I want one example, one idea that's not on this list before I keep moving.
Making like a fake account of somebody.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a good one. I mean, not good, but that's definitely something I left off the list. That's a good example. Mm-hmm. Yeah, or even manipulating the picture. Thank you, Richard. Right, going in and taking a picture and photoshopping, changing what the picture actually is, and then posting it back out for people to make their own assumptions. Phone calls, impersonating. We'll talk about those sorts of things later on. So we got a good handle there, right? We know what it looks like. Now the question is, what do you do? Right, so step 1, it's real easy. The button's right there, report it on the platform. But we know that's only going to do so much. If it's happening around school or around a workplace, also report it there. I know that seems petty, but just keep in mind these things can escalate, and it's good to have the paper trail in place that if somebody is repeatedly doing things that are not good, like anything else, it's good to have lined up all of the examples so you keep it from really escalating out of control. I know for sure South Mountain has policies around it, around cyberbullying or taking things in person offline or taking things online in person. There's rules and regulations around that, and most workplaces have policies around social media and cyberbullying as well. Talked about be the bigger person and walk away. The social media version of that is just to unfriend somebody, block them, mute them, whatever you got to do, right? Just do the old-fashioned walk away. I don't need this person in my life. Keep the receipts. I'm getting into vernacular there. I know not everybody's on the same page. Can somebody who does know in this context let the rest of the class know what I mean by keep the receipts?
Like any conversations you have with that person, in case they try to flip the script.
Mm-hmm. Right, so, get your screenshots, get the dates and times, have a record of what happened. Big one now is don't respond. This is something my wife gets on me all the time. I have very strong political views that I'm not going to bring up in this classroom, but I see things happening online and I want to get in an argument with so-and-so's grandma, and my wife is like, dude, what are you doing? Right? So just don't respond, just walk away, it's not worth it. And then also just taking a break in general. That's especially now with a lot of times not being able to socialize and go hang out and do the things you want to do. It's very easy to find yourself just scrolling all day and getting more and more upset. So just be cognizant of that. There comes a time, just put it down, walk away. Thankfully, the weather is under 110 degrees and you can actually go take a walk now. So same thing, Thinking about, we know how to look at it. What do we need to do? What's something maybe missing off of this list in terms of what to do when you see it happening?
Check on the person that is being bullied.
That's a really good one and really thoughtful one too, right? So check in on them. Say, hey, how's this actually hitting you, right? Are you able just to let it roll off your back, or do you need somebody to talk to? That's a really good one. Awesome, thank you. All right, another quick little video to set up a discussion. Short one again here. Do not fret. All right. So digging into this one, I know we have a couple creative types in the class here. Has it ever happened, or just thinking about it? How would you feel if somebody takes your creative work and they republish it and they don't go through that checklist?
You're gonna want that money.
Right. Right. I mean, not even money exactly, Courtney. It's insulting, right? I did all this work, and you're not even gonna tell them who did it in the first place. So putting the legal issues aside, also just as a person, right? Somebody else put the hard work in. Make sure you're given the credit where it's due. Soapbox for a second. Not gonna go down the whole plagiarism hole, but in an academic setting, same kind of thing applies. If you don't know what I mean by the word plagiarism, reach out to me for help. because that can definitely get you stuck up in some bad ways as you're doing your work. One other thing, how does Weird Al get to make his parodies? How's that work?
Does he get permission?
He actually does. So he's covered under fair use, but he actually always personally reaches out. Anytime he's going to do a new song, he reaches out to that artist or to their agent and gets their explicit permission. If you have some time and you want to look up a funny one, he started doing that after Amish Paradise because LL Cool J was not very cool about it. So that was a whole thing. And so that's just a sidebar. If you want to go do some reading, you're bored for 20 minutes, look up the story of Amish Paradise and how LL Cool J reacted. Okay. Anybody know what the crap test is or have a guess? What if I say fake news? All right, so the crap test is about knowing if your source is credible and filtering through everything out there to get as close to the truth as possible. So there's 5 components. 1 is currency, right? When did this thing show up? Is it updated? Are the sources new? And do the links work? Number 2, relevance. Does this have anything to do with the topic or your question? Who is the intended audience? Is it really, really, really complicated and advanced? Or is it something set up for kids, right? Is it something you need to be looking at? Have you looked at a whole bunch of different sources? One way I like to look at it, if I was writing a paper, would I be comfortable using this as a citation? That's a good test, right? The authority. Who's the author? Who's the publisher? What's their credentials? What organizations are they affiliated with? Is there an email address that you can contact them? Or are they hiding behind some anonymous name? Thinking about how to establish authority, even looking at the website itself, right? So we come to southmountaincc.edu. What does that edu mean?
Education.
Right, so right off the top, you know that there is some level of trust just based off the fact that it's a .edu. Keep that in mind with your .com, .gov, .org, .net. Think about what each of those mean and what stands behind them, right? .com, anybody can go buy one. .net, anybody can go buy one. .org, generally you're dealing with some sort of nonprofit, but that's not ironclad. And you also need to look into what are the affiliations of that organization. .gov can generally be trusted, right? That's a government website. It is official record. And then .edu we talked about, that means you're dealing with an academic educational source. But keep in mind, not everything on a .gov or a .edu is official record. A lot of times people are able to publish their own personal opinions through that .edu. All right, accuracy. Are they right? Is there supporting evidence? Can you verify it somewhere else or from what you know? Some giveaways, how's the grammar? How's the spelling? How's the typos? Right? If they're all over the place, they didn't even take the time to proofread, do you think they took the time to check their sources and make sure that what they're putting out there is true? Probably not. And then another thing is not gonna get into the whole thing on tone policing, but when you're looking at articles and sources, what's the tone of that author? Are they being biased? Is there too much emotion, or are they being straight up factual? And then the last one is purpose. What are they trying to do? Are they just informing you? Are they teaching you? Are they trying to sell you something? Is it entertainment? Are they trying to persuade you? Think about that as you're reading it. And then even, is that purpose clear? Or are they trying to appear informative when they're actually being persuasive? And then, is the point of view objective and impartial? Going back to authority and currency, right? Put all those pieces together. Think about what is the purpose of this article. So I think, especially with what we're getting into in the next couple months here, when you see things pop up on your feed, keep the crap test in mind on, is this something I need to be internalizing, or should I just skip it? All right, we had a couple folks talking about they want to get into cybersecurity, information security. Number one piece on that is physical security. So the way I have my desk laid out right now, there's a window right in front of me, but the back of my screen is to that window. Somebody walking down the street is not able to see what I'm doing. Thinking about back in the days when we used to travel, right? If you have a work laptop and you're leaving your hotel room, what do you do with the laptop? How do you physically secure that laptop so somebody doesn't walk off with you, walk off with it? A lot of times we go do work at the library or a coffee shop. How do you make sure somebody isn't looking over your shoulder and seeing everything on your screen? Right, so physical security is tangible, right? You can touch it, you can make physical changes to increase your security that way. Authentication, this is proving that you are who you say you are, right? So that's number one example is a password. Authentication breaks down 3 ways. These are called factors of authentication. Something you know is a password or a PIN code. Something you have is a key or an ID card. I'm actually digging out my work one right now, right? So this right here is something I have. That's an ID card for me. And then something you are is biometrics. That's your fingerprints, that's your eye scan, anything like that. So that's how we get into multi-factor authentication. That's where you're combining 2 of these things. Example there would be your Gmail, right? When you try to sign in from somewhere, you have to know your password. And then if you have enabled MFA, you're also gonna get either a text message or a notification on your phone that says, okay, I know my password, I also have my phone, and I can authenticate using multiple factors. Information security folks, do you have any general purpose password tips you want to pass along?
You know, it's like better to have it as a phrase instead of like a one-word kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, this can be, if you really dig down the weeds, it can be a contentious discussion, but generally, don't have your password be password 123, right? Have it be something complex. Also, don't use the same password all over the place, because if somebody gets your password one time, now they have your password everywhere. So just some things to keep in mind.
Yeah, have like 8 to 13 characters, change every 3 to 6 months.
There we go. Right. A lot of times in your workplace and at the college, these things are going to be enforced. But thinking about your personal information security as well, make sure you do some of these things. And
Don't
then,
write it down somewhere.
right, yeah, don't write it down. It's amazing how much you see that actually. You know, because the organization enforces these password rules of okay, it's got to be 13 characters, have an uppercase, a lowercase, a special character, can't be the last five, right? These things can get way out of control. That actually ends up being a terrible policy because then people will just write their password down on a sticky note and have it sitting there on the back side of their keyboard. That defeats the whole purpose. Assuming that's all good, let's talk about data protection, and through kind of three different lenses here. So thinking about your data is going to be your pictures, your emails, if you're in a business environment, all your proprietary stuff, maybe your customer list, if you're a government organization, social security numbers and health information, all kinds of things that you want to keep private, right? Three ways to protect it. Number one is migration, right? When you're moving from an old device to a new device, how do you make sure nothing gets left behind? Number two is data backup. As a general rule in professional environment, when you're talking about data, if you have one copy, you have no copies. Eventually, at some point, whatever hard drive you have, whatever device you have, it is going to fail. And if you don't have a backup, your stuff is gone. On a personal level, that can be backing up to the cloud, putting things on a thumb drive, right? Just if it's really important, have two copies of it. So that way, if one gets somehow destroyed, you still have the backup. And then data disposal. We're talking about wiping your hard drive or somehow destroying it when you're done, right? You have a laptop, you got a new one, you decided to be responsible, and instead of throwing the laptop out, you're selling it on Craigslist. How do you make sure that the next person that gets your laptop doesn't have all of your data? Right, so really getting in there and making sure that the data is unrecoverable. Just deleting it is not enough. There are tools available that if somebody really wants it and they have physical control of your device, they're going to get the data back. So, looking at this picture, does anyone have a guess on what that is? And no, it's not something that's medically available in Arizona. So this is actually the remnants of a hard drive from an Amazon data center. So when they say we destroy our hard drives when we're done with them, they mean it, right? There's no way that you could possibly get the data back off of that shredded almost to a pulp hard drive. For most of us, that's way, way overdoing it. But just keep in mind, depending on how sensitive your data is, you may have to go that far. All right, we are almost there. Got one last video for the day, another short one. I just want to have another little conversation about it.
What's the one word about race?
All right, I told you that was a short one. Again, sorry for the ad there. It is not an endorsement from me or the college. That is just something that popped up on the website. So, thinking about the video itself on the biometrics and the fingerprints, how do you feel after seeing that?
Realize that Face ID isn't so bad.
There you go. So for me, I was actually swept up in that OPM breach, and that was not insignificant. So for the work I do, I have a clearance, which is essentially a very heavy-duty background check. Part of that is all 10 of my fingerprints go on file. They want to know every college I ever attended, every job I ever had, every place I ever lived, and a point of contact for each of those places. And additionally, 3 personal references. They also need to know my wife, my kids, everybody in my immediate family, meaning siblings and parents, addresses for them, phone numbers for them. All of that goes into a file. That is the file that got hacked. So, I have no privacy at this point. And even everybody closely associated with me had their privacy infringed based on that hack. So, yay, bright, shiny news to end the class. But, it's just something to keep in mind of, even if you take all of the precautions yourself, you need to know what organizations are holding your data and what they're doing with it. Obviously, in my case, there was nothing I could do. But just keep in mind, if you have an old MySpace, Facebook, Twitter, whatever it is that you're not using anymore, go in there, shut it down, make sure it all gets deleted, right? If there's any way that you can kind of make that attack surface smaller, go ahead and do that. So, sorry for making this turn into a scared straight session, but we want to think about what's going on. So, we talked about passwords and biometrics and how you make things hard to break into. Let's also keep in mind this idea of social engineering, which basically is using human interaction, social skills to trick somebody into giving all of that up and going around it and leading to a compromise of information. There's different types of social engineering. Dumpster diving is physically looking through somebody's trash, right? Did they forget to shred a document and now you have their account number? Shoulder surfing is that idea in the coffee shop where somebody is actually looking over your shoulder, seeing what websites you're going to and what you're typing in. Tailgating, if you work in an office that has, you have to badge in and unlock the door. Tailgating is when a second person walks in without swiping their own badge. Spam and phishing, these popped up in the chat box earlier, right? Those are emails trying to get you to click on a link and put some information in. How do you protect yourself? Don't do what I did. If you have a badge that shows that you work in some sensitive place, put it away when you're out of the office, right? You don't need people knowing where you work and how important the work is that you do. Be aware of your background, especially now that we're doing video calls all the time. There's nothing behind me that gives away where I am, right? It's just a regular wall, and there's one picture that my son drew for me. So, yeah, actually it lets you know a little bit about me personally, but you're not going to know where I am or who I work for based on what's behind me. The PowerPoints are all available. If this is something that you want to look more into, this link out to US CERT is a government agency talking more about social engineering and how you can avoid some specific scenarios. So, with that, I'm done talking at you. Let's take another look back at Canvas in terms of what is going on this week and what you need to be doing. Gonna start here on the home page. I do have this handy dandy list of assignments and due dates. One thing to keep in mind, this week I made everything due on Friday just because it's the first week and I know we're all trying to find our groove. But going forward, everything is due on Tuesday. So try to get it done by Tuesday this week, but I understand first week it's hard to find your groove. So I'm giving you a couple extra days, but that is one thing that I found to be helpful is consistency. So I set this class up to be consistent, that every week the assignments are always due at 11:59 on Tuesday. You don't have to remember, oh, this one's due here, this one's due then. It's always Tuesday. And then this also shows how many points each assignment is worth. And then you'll see we have these 3 extra credits that are, if you do all 3 of them, 120 points. That is more than enough to make up for turning something in late or missing an assignment. So, if you mess up, it's not the end of the world. We have extra credit available, and I will also work with you. If you have a bad week, don't give up on this class. We'll find a way through together. So, modules is where all of your work is. This week there's a few assignments, but they're all small. Syllabus quiz, everybody has that done now. The tell us about you and your technological experiences, that's the discussion board of doing that icebreaker on Canvas. We'll look at each of these in a moment. Gmail and Canvas is your second assignment. And then the third one, this whole discussion we just had around being safe with technology, there is a quiz for that. And let me get this out of the way. So, tell us about you is a discussion board. So just come in here, tell us a little bit about you, and then also answer any of these 2 questions. Nice way for us to get to know each other. While you're here, if you find somebody who has stuff in common, you might want to work together in class, reach out, make some connections. This is our way to make those connections that we would normally be making today in person and on purpose. Number 2, Gmail and Canvas. Get into your Maricopa student Gmail. If you don't know how to do that, how did you get to Canvas? But if you got to Canvas and you don't know how to get to your email, there's a link here that will help you. I sent an email out to this class last week with the subject of zip-a-dee-doo-dah. So go to your Gmail and find that email. Attached to that email is a zip file. Get that, download it, unzip it, read the instructions, make some changes to that document, zip it back up, and save it to your desktop. When you're done, 2 things. Email the new zip file back to me, and also upload the new zip file to Canvas. If all of that was words that you don't understand, we do have some time here. We're wrapping up class, but I'm not going to walk away. We'll have about 20-30 minutes that if you need help with that, I can help you make sure you're comfortable with email and zip files. So if you need some help there, stay here in the WebEx and I will help you out. And then the Being Safe with Technology quiz. Think about all the things we were just looking at, and then inside of there is a quiz. I call it a quiz just because it's the easiest way for me to grade it. Really, it's just a whole bunch of questions reflecting back on what we talked about in the second half of class today. Whew. Okay. Any questions on the 3 assignments that need to be done by Friday?